The pre-trip inspection when doing the CDL test is easily the most difficult part in the test. And out of that, something that's so important is the portion where you do the front wheels, the front suspension, and the front brakes. And what makes it so important is that you have to repeat it 2 other times on the vehicle. So if you look at the back of the vehicle, you have the wheels, suspension, and brakes. And at the rear of the trailer, you have the wheels and suspension and brakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the pre-trip inspection for those portions now. The first section that I want to do in the pre-trip inspection is the front wheels. In the front wheels, you have the tires. In the tires, you want to make sure that there are no abrasions, bulges, or cracks, and that you have at least 4/32 of tread depth in all major grooves. The tires should be properly inflated to 110 psi, and I would check that with an air gauge. And the last thing I would check for the tire is to make sure that it has no leaks. On from the tire, we will move to the rim. You want to make sure that the rim is securely mounted to the truck by lugs and that it's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it has no illegal welds. Also, you want to make sure that this valve stem is not cracked, leaking, and that it is properly capped. And if I wanted to check the air, I would take the cap off, put a gauge on, and make sure that it reads 110 psi. Next section, the lug nuts. Lug nuts are securely mounted to the hub post. There are none missing, and there are no rust streaks or shiny metal to indicate looseness. The wheels are not cracked or distorted around the lug mounting holes. The last of this section is the hub oil seal. It's securely mounted by bolts, and it is not leaking, and it is filled to the proper level. Next section we're going to do is the front suspension. In the front suspension, the first part we have are the springs. The springs are securely mounted by nuts and bolts. There are none missing, misaligned, or broken. After that, we have the spring mounts front, center, and rear. They are securely mounted by nuts and bolts. They are not cracked, bent, or broken, and they have no missing parts. Next, we have the U-bolts, which are securely mounted by nuts, and they are not bent or broken, and their nuts and washers present no shiny metal, which indicates looseness. Finally, we have the shocks, which are securely mounted by nuts and bolts, and they are not leaking. Okay, the final section that we're going to do of the pre-trip inspection is the front brakes. Under the front brakes, the first thing we have are the brake hoses. They're securely mounted by clamps. They are not cut or frayed, and they show no signs of leaking. The next part we have is the brake chamber. It's securely mounted by nuts and bolts. It's not cracked, bent, broken, and shows no signs of leaking. Around it, we have the band clamp, which is not cracked, bent, or broken, and the bolts are in place. The drums and linings for the vehicle are securely mounted. The drums have no cracks. They are free of dirt, oil, or grease, and the thumb linings have more than 1/4 inch of lining. The final portion is the slack adjuster and push rod, which is securely mounted by nuts and bolts. It's not cracked, bent, broken, and it is properly greased. The slack adjuster has less than 1 inch of play, and the pins and keepers are present.